The Yemeni government announces it has taken real steps to facilitate launch of flights from Sana'a airport. Director of World Food Programme warns of shortages in funding for the humanitarian aid agencies working in Yemen. International organizations urges Houthi militia to submit maps of minefields that the group has planted across the country. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news of me, Shazad Abdelbey. The ambassador Ahmed Ali Abdullah Saleh mourned the death of UAE President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed. The ambassador said received this news with great sadness and deep sorrow. It's further sent deepest mourn and sincere feelings to his family. He also prayed for his family to grant success to their duties to serve Emirat and the Arab and Islamic nation. Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed, President of United Arab Emirates, has died today after long years of political career. According to Times, Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed was one of the most influential leaders in the Middle East and the world. This report has more details.
Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates, died today after a long political career serving his people and nation. The United Arab Emirates announced official mourning and disruption of work in ministries, departments, federal and local institutions and the private sector for 3 days, starting from Friday. Sheikh Khalifa established the Department of Social Services, which provided funds to citizens without any interest, helping increase people's income and contributed to their economic and social level. During his days, Sheikh Khalifa paid great attention to the projects of developing and modernizing infrastructure and various service facilities and worked to build an integrated legislative system as a basis for the process of economic and social development. Throughout his life, he was keen to help and support everyone in need without discrimination because of race, color, religion, or gender. He founded Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan Foundation for Humanitarian Works, which has conducted several humanitarian programs in more than 40 countries around the world. In the end, Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan was a conspicuous political figure, not only in the Arabian Peninsula, but also in the world. That's why the British newspaper The Times considered him one of the 25 most influential leaders in the world.
After a 2-week delay, the Yemeni government has announced that it took real steps in terms of anticipating launch of flights from Sana'a airport. According to some observers, such a step reflects the commitment of the government to the UN truce despite Houthi violations. This report has more details.
The airport in Sana'a has been closed to commercial traffic since August 2016 when airstrikes disrupted service to the city. The first flight under the truce was planned for April 24 from Sana'a to Jordan's capital Amman but had to be scrapped after national carrier Yemeni said it did not receive the necessary permits. Each side blamed the other for the holdup, which drew a statement of concern from UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg, who called for a quick resolution. The Norwegian Refugee Council A group said at the time the inability to operate commercial flights out of Sana'a had stranded tens of thousands of medical patients who are seeking treatment abroad. Yesterday, Yemen's government announced that it will permit citizens living in areas controlled by the Houthi rebels to travel on Houthi-issued passports, removing a barrier to long-awaited commercial flights out of the capital Sana'a. The flights are one component of a renewable 2-month truce that went into effect in early April, but they have been delayed as warring factions squabbled over which documents passengers should use. The government has agreed during the ceasefire period to allow the Yemeni people who were held hostage to the Houthis the opportunity to travel through Sana'a airport with passports issued in Houthi-controlled areas. However, a source stated that the government is not responsible for any data contained in the Houthi issued documents. Yemen's embassy in Washington said on Twitter that Yemen authorities had accepted a UN proposal to use Houthis documents on an interim basis and only during the truce. There was no immediate word on when the first flight would take place, but the transport minister in Sana'a said the airport is ready. Let's hope that this will actually lead to regular commercial flights and more, like the opening of roads in Taiz and other governorates.
A Yemeni Airlines plane failed to take off from Cairo Airport to Aden Airport. Due to a technical breakdown, the Yemeni plane couldn't take off despite 5 hours of maintenance operation. According to the passengers, they were stuck on Yemeni plane board due to the explosion of one of its tires. An international relief organization revealed the killing and injury of 95 citizens since the beginning of the truce. Observers had experienced that the expected truce to reduce the number of victims to a much lower percentage than it is today. However, the director of the Norwegian Refugee Council in Yemen considered the truce achieved only humanitarian results. The World Food Programme said that the food situation in Yemen is catastrophic. They estimated that Yemen needs about $2 billion annually in order to secure food. They also expected that the food prices would rise by 30%, especially with the impacts of the Ukrainian crisis. The director of the WFP has warned of stopping international aid agencies in Yemen due to acute funding crisis. This report has more details.
World Food Programme Richard Reagan stated at the outset of a Gulf visit to meet important donors that the financial gap has left the UN with severe financial challenges that are hampering its attempts to help feed the Arab world's poorest country. Foreign aid is critical to assisting poor people in Yemen, but cash alone will not fix the country's social and economic challenges. He claimed that the humanitarian gap was forcing the WFP to make difficult decisions on how to distribute food rations properly. Because of restricted resources and a limited budget, the UN official said one of the most difficult decisions he has to make is when to cut food rations for each household. Hunger and sickness, according to Mr. Reagan, are exacting a huge human toll on Yemen, accounting for the majority of the fatalities recorded in the nation last year. Yemen is severely reliant on international aid and imports more than 90% of its food, its economy and local currency destroyed by 7 years of conflict. According to the UN, over 4 million Yemenis are already in an emergency stage of food shortage. Despite the critical need for humanitarian aid, the World Food Programme and other UN agencies are struggling to generate the estimated $200 million per month required to feed the country's vulnerable people. At a pledge summit in March, foreign donors again fell short of addressing Yemen's demands. The UN raised $1.3 billion, or around 30% of the $4.2 billion required to ease the suffering of almost 17 million Yemenis. Yemen's humanitarian response plan has been underfunded for the 6th year in a row. According to him, the conflict in Ukraine has aggravated Yemen's problems by diverting attention away from the deteriorating humanitarian catastrophe. But the European war has impacted more than just Yemen. Mr. Reagan stated that Russia's invasion had a big influence on the area, as countries like Lebanon rely on sunflower oil, wheat, flour, and beans, food supplies they receive from the two nations currently at strife.
A human rights report indicated the looting of 12,000 civilian homes in 6 years by the Houthi militia. The report stated that the Houthi militia raids have affected 12,000 homes in 17 Yemeni governorates. The raids resulted in the bombing of more than 1,000 houses. Dozens of migrants were killed due to Houthi clashes west of Sada. In a process of forced displacement, armed clashes launched by the Houthis in Sada. The coalition stressed that the Houthis' brutal operation came after burning of migrant homes. International rights groups have voiced concerns over the danger of Houthi mines on citizens in Yemen. They called to put pressure on Houthis to hand over maps of minefields. This report has more details.
Ravaged by poverty, war, and economic collapse, Yemen faces acute humanitarian problems, which have been aggravated by threats from landmines laid across much of the nation during various conflicts and uprisings in recent decades. Many of these devices have been used by the Houthi rebels as part of the civil war. However, efforts are being made to demine Yemen, including by the Yemeni authorities and Saudi project for landmine clearance, which is MASAM, launched by the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center. Since 2018, MASAM has been removing mines, improvised explosive devices, and unexploded ordnance. During this period, MASAM has cleared more than 32 million square meters and destroyed nearly 5,000 anti-personnel mines and close to 7,500 IEDs. Demining is carried out by 32 teams of Yemenis who have been through comprehensive training, even if, as is typical, they had previous demining experience. The Houthis don't reveal where mines have been laid, so operatives often find out by speaking to locals. During an initial non-technical survey, residents may also pinpoint a location where a mine caused a relative, a leg, or killed an animal, and operatives can often then work out the line in which others were laid. Metal detectors highlight the precise location. Of devices, which are typically collected and destroyed, hundreds at a time, in controlled explosions. MASAM and other entities carrying out demining in Yemen are unusually doing their work while conflict continues to rage. Another attempt is done by US-based Yemeni American advocacy group called Bridges to Yemen. They have launched an event in coordination with the International Yemeni Campaign against the use of landmines, and they called on Houthis to stop the killing of Yemenis and to hand in the maps for demining efforts.
Coming next. In Ebyen, a local volunteer has started making a small park to be used by people.
أقول لك راحت بالغداء لأهلها شلت الغداء وراحت بالأهلها في المزرعة، والمزرعة ركبت على حمار ما حتى نص المزرعة وانفجر فيها اللغم، دعست على اللغم وانفجر فيهم. الحمار انتهى ما ترى وتبقعت رجليها كامل. نغير منها نغير الشبعة اللي هي البنت سابها من دور رجليها، لما صافناها طبيها أقرب طبيها وصافناها لكن بطلت رجليها كامل.
قلت أزود هلي وقابل لي لعام وطبعت تحت الزواية.
Welcome back. In the time of war and absence of government, local community initiatives have been started to replace such a state vacuum. One of those initiatives comes this time from Ebyen, where a fine arts designer has made a small park for his own people to use and relax. This report has more details.
Saleh Ba Mu'min, a lover of nature and a native of the village of Qadma Zaid in Ebyen, built a small park near his village to offer a leisurely space for other residents. Saleh renovated the space after it was overgrown with thorn trees to make it fit for recreational activities.
This small project was founded to serve the community. Establishing this park was a matter of principle. I needed to improve the community in whatever small way. Visitors come here to relax. We thank the architect Mahdi Abdullah for the artistic touch he left on this place.
The park is a natural outlet for many citizens who frequent it for leisurely downtime with their children and relatives. The greenery alleviates people's stress and provides them with an opportunity to engage in relaxed conversation.
Despite the dire economic situation and circumstances we're experiencing, this place remains a haven for us all. Even though it's a simple park, to us and to our children, it's so much more.
Aware of the impact aesthetic decoration has on people's psychological state, the artist Mahdi Abdullah had introduced creative and artistic touches to the park's corners, including old hanging collectibles and other formations that were recycled and turned into remarkable masterpieces.
I've collected small trees and decorated them with white color. Then I started designing basins and brought some flowers. I brought one particular American plant to give extra effective dimension to the scenery of the park. I liked doing the project and inshallah will continue to supervise it to the last day in my life.
The park reflects a vibrant, humane image that requires nurturing and development. Many citizens long for spots to relax, to acquaint themselves with new people, and have meaningful and engaging conversations. Such recreational spots provide ample opportunity for people to forget the burdensome weight of the war, if only for a while.
Internet services have returned to the districts of Hais and Al Khoukha after 2 months of interruption. Local sources reported that the two services started again after the engineering teams managed to repair the fiber optic cable. The fiber optic cable located on the lines between the joint forces and the Houthi militia was subjected to damage which prevented citizens from communication through the internet. Houthi militia continues to block main roads despite the truce, urging warring parties to open roads as to ease movements of people and goods. This report has more details.
In the south of Hodeidah, dozens of travelers and merchants stuck in High Surgical Port appealed to the United Nations and the international community to put pressure on the Houthi militia to open High Surgical Road in order to facilitate the passage of civilians and to remove all obstacles to their movement, in accordance with the agreement that came within the terms of the UN truce. The drivers of commercial vehicles and trucks who transport food and commercial items were unable to enter the militia-controlled areas and move freely.
We've been trying for 2 days now, but we can't reach Al-Jarrahi, as Houthis are cutting off the roads. We hope we can move freely without any obstacles or difficulty. They announced that the road is open, but the Houthi militia are still cutting off the roads. We ask the organizations and the United Nations to help us open the road. Instead of driving for 24 hours, it's going to take 10 minutes to go from Hais to Al-Jarrahi. We also need to remove all the mines and explosive devices and anything that could be dangerous to citizens, merchants and drivers. We want everything to go back to normal.
The humanitarian port was opened by the government side within days, according to the truce and the directives of the Presidential Command Council. While the militia is still refusing to open it or to respond to the humanitarian truce, however, they fired at the vehicles and trucks that followed the line of the port to impose cut-offs and looting under the name of the war effort.
I've been standing here for 3 hours with my children in the heat of the sun in order to pass to Al-Jarrahi, but we couldn't. We want security and safety in our country like before. We ask the United Nations envoy to implement the commitments under which the truce was imposed, although it's still being violated by Houthis since the first day of its announcement. They're still firing on citizens and they don't allow humanitarian organizations to pass or citizens to move freely in their country.
The Houthi rebellion has doubled the suffering of millions of civilians, including the owners of factories, commercial companies, and importers of goods, and they have become the target of international inaction and an applied international silence regarding the continuation of the crimes and practices pursued by the Houthi group against them, and the imposition of its applied and unjust siege on the Yemeni people without any deterrent.
The Prime Minister directed to the rapid implementation of the full operation plan of Aden refineries. This came as an attempt to secure the local markets, needs of oil derivatives, and supporting the national economy. During his meeting with the Minister of Oil and Minerals, he stressed the need to enhance the plan to receiving and managing oil facilitation. The Minister of Industry and Trade revealed the rise in goods is not equal with the prevailing exchange rates in the markets. He directed the general managers of Ministry's office to activate all oversight committees and carry out their tasks. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The Yemeni government announces it has taken real steps to facilitate launch of flights from Sana'a airport. Director of World Food Programme warns of shortages in funding for the humanitarian aid agencies working in Yemen. International organizations urges Houthi militia to submit maps of minefields that the group has planted across the country. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.